And this is Petra Sheets. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. And you're online?
I am online, yes.
Well, maybe until we can troubleshoot this audio issue, I'll go ahead and get things started.
Get a thumbs up or
Yeah.
Ken, it sounds like they can't hear us, but we can hear them. Is that correct?
There. Can you give us a thumbs up if that's okay with you? Or a thumbs down if you'd like us to wait?
So, yeah.
Can you hear us now?
I can hear the room, but I can't hear.
We can hear you.
But I can't be heard.
We can hear you now, Ken.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. So, welcome everyone to the Disposal Site Advisory Committee meeting on Wednesday, July 31st, 2024. It's now 6:02 p.m. So I want to do a roll call and find out if everyone's here. So our returning members are Chuck Gilbert. Chuck, are you here?
Yes, sir.
All right. And Debbie Guile, are you here?
No.
Okay.
She let me know she wouldn't be able to attend tonight.
Okay. No problem. Brent, are you here? Brent Pawlowski.
No.
No.
Okay. And I'm Ken Eklund. I'm the chair. So now let's go to our new committee members. So Jennifer Field, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Good to have you here. Matthew, are you here? Matthew Rutgers.
Yes, I am.
Good to have you here. And David Hackelman.
Yes.
Good to have you here, David. Lansing Stout.
He has dropped out of DSAC and will not be able to join us.
Okay. Then how about Jeffrey Morrell?
Not
No.
present.
Not present. Okay. And Rachel Purcell, are you here?
I'm here.
Good, welcome. Okay, and also Ian. Ian is our committee member designated by the landfill owner, Republic Services. Ian, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here, Ken.
Okay, great. You guys are really small on my screen, so I'm just kind of flying blind in a way. Let's see. So for just a little little protocol for the Zoom part. So for non-members, could you please turn your camera and microphone off? And staff, could you just please turn all non-member cameras and microphones off so we don't have any interruptions? The microphones is the more important part of that. Okay, we're using an agenda today prepared by county staff. We won't have public comments today, and that was not a decision that the committee was really part of. So before we roll into the welcome by Rachel. Bailey, I have a question, and this question has to do with the materials for this meeting. The members of the committee were provided with some documents. We were given the 2023 annual report, for example, and we were also provided with some community member comments that had been sent in. I kind of expected all that to be rolled into a packet, and then the packet would be available, for anyone attending the meeting. And so that just seems like really standard protocol. So I'm just wondering why that wasn't done.
My apologies, Ken, and to the rest of the DSAC. I did email everyone. Did people get the email that I sent that had all the reading and whatnot? But you're right, I haven't printed out any hard copies for others that are in the audience. So if anybody in the audience would like hard copies of the materials, please let me know after the meeting and I'll get those to you.
So that's not really addressing the kind of the full issue. So I'm just more used to when I go to a Board of Commissioners meeting, they have a packet, and the packet contains the documents that are relevant to the meeting, that's happening. And in the past, DSAC has had a packet, and so I'm just wondering why it is that we don't have a packet, I guess is the question.
And I can answer that for you. It's Rachel. If you look at the website, all meeting materials are on the website. But due to a lot of our sustainability efforts, even the BOC does not carry physical copies for members outside. We haven't been doing that for a while as a practice. But it's certainly, if you look right on the agenda page and the website, the DSAC website will have all meeting materials. And the group has said they had received those documents.
So when I checked the meeting page, I don't know, it was earlier today, maybe noon or 1 o'clock. There was no packet listed there. There was no packet available.
The packet is not typically posted until after the meeting. It is sent via email or USPS to committee members prior to the meeting.
So,
And in the future, if you'd like to be able to review the presentations ahead of time, we can begin adding those to that website before the meetings begin.
Sure.
so I'm still not, I'm sorry, I'm still not following the answer here. So like in this meeting, there is the 2023 Coffee Butte Landfill annual report. What I'm used to is on the DSAC webpage, there will be a link that'll say agenda, and then there'll be another link that'll say packet. And so someone coming to that webpage can download the materials which are going to be discussed in the meeting. So like the 2023 annual report, it's available right there on the DSAC webpage. So that's what I was expecting. It seemed to me that that's kind of what commonly happens. And also, the citizen comments, the community member written comments that Bailey received, that would also be in the packet. It'd be all part of the packet or the materials which are being used in this meeting. So I'm not talking about presentation materials necessarily, like Republic's presentation or what Bailey's presentation is, et cetera. I'm talking about I'm talking about the documents that we received, the committee members, and I'm really asking, why did the committee members only receive that and not the public at large?
My apologies, Ken. This is my first DSAC meeting, actually, so I didn't understand the protocol, so we'll do that in the future.
Okay. So it's just, I just want to kind of emphasize that that's important. So, you know, so the people can actually look at the documents that we're going to be looking at. So my rule of thumb is, we do have a responsibility, right, in the committee to provide a forum for the public. And so I'm just very protective that the public get included, in these things. And this was a way in which the public was not included. Do you see what I mean?
Understood, Ken.
Okay. And so from the comments that I heard earlier, so the documents will indeed be part of the record of this meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to clear that up. So I guess, Rachel, over to you.
Hi, well, first of all, welcome everyone. My name is Rachel McEnany. I'm the county administrator here in Benton County, and it's exciting to have DSAC reestablished. It's great to see new members and new bylaws. And I just want to also recognize, Ken, because you don't know in the room, but Brent has joined us, right? So
Yes.
nice to meet you, Brent.
Nice to meet you.
So, so this is the first meeting, and it's an orientation for new members and a review of the updated bylaws for all members. I think it's really important, and it was important for me to come tonight to kind of understand expectations for any committee on board to achieve its mission. And I want to share with you the county's expectations of DSAC moving forward. So I guess the most fundamental expectation is that everyone will come to the table with an open mind and committed to treating others with respect and civility, and just overall perform this important function. So the staff will walk you through the 3 key functions of DSAC. They are, number 1, reviewing our regional disposable site. 2, provide a forum and dialogue for all our communities. And 3, preparing an annual report. Again, today's an orientation. DSAC will address these key functions in the upcoming meetings. DSAC's functions are clearly defined in the bylaws, and soon you will discuss your approach, meeting frequency, and other logistics. As you do, please keep in mind, this is a busy time for the county, especially community development staff. I know many of you are interested in the conditional use permit application and other issues related to Coffin View, but we're also working on other priorities for our communities, and I ask you to be mindful of scope, creep, and the number and length of future meetings. We are here to support your success, but staff time and capacity is limited. As a volunteer, we appreciate your service on DSAC. Each of you were selected by the Board of Commissioners, and we were very fortunate. We had over 30 applicants in a county that's just under 100,000. That's pretty, it's very nice, and I hope you appreciate that, your selection to being on the committee was very competitive. And as we begin, I sincerely look forward to all of your leadership, the great work you're going to accomplish. I'm hoping that we don't have to litigate the past, that we can work towards the future. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing from all your voices and serving Benton County today. So thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So we can move on to the next item in the agenda, which is group introductions. So time to get to know each other and ask questions about the committee and its goals. So welcome, everyone. I kind of don't see too much of a structure for this time. Perhaps committee members can just take turns introducing yourselves, explain a little bit what brought you to DSAC and kind of what you hope that DSAC can accomplish. Who wants to go first?
Bailey, you want to?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Bailey Payne. I've been working for Benton County for almost 6 months now. Before Benton County, I worked for the school district as a sustainability coordinator. And before that, I worked for Marion County in a very similar role to what I'm doing now. Worked there for about 18 years. So I'm really excited to have everyone together. I think the experience that you all collectively have is really impressive. As Rachel said, there were a lot of applicants, so we're all very pleased with the quality of folks that are serving. So thank you all very much. One of the things I'm hoping to get is just dialogue between community concerns about Coffin Butte landfill and in a civil discussion with Republic Services about those issues. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your volunteerism. That's something that's real important to me. I volunteer also. And so your time is very much appreciated.
My name is Rachel Purcell. I've been a resident of Corvallis for about 3 years, so I'm a newcomer to Benton County, originally from the East Coast. I absolutely love Corvallis and never want to leave and want to become, a more integral part of the community and participate as I can. My background is in science writing and journalism, so I'm very interested in kind of digging into, this very complex thing that we have here. And I also am, because I'm a writer and a journalist, very passionate about communication. And I want to see that, we have more engagement with the community and like more of a connection.
Brent Pulowski, 50-year resident of Corvallis. And I got involved on the committee because I always heard about the landfill, was curious, and what I hope to get out of being on the committee is to listen and consider and give my opinion.
Well, umpire rules, if you're going to dust off the home plate, you always should respect the audience behind you too. So I'll just turn Chuck Gilbert. The gray whiskers has been around here for a while. So fundamentally, I worked at the railroad, Southern Pacific, for about 33 years, and then Portland Western for 15 years. Then I went up to ODOT Rail and worked there for about 10 years. Now I work for my wife. Her honeydew list is a scroll now, so I just have something to do. She said, well, if you want to do something, volunteer. So I worked for Foursquare Garbage for about a year, transitioning from other jobs. So that really sparked an interest in working with DSAC. So I do appreciate working with everybody here. And so make it fun. Thank you.
Okay, I can't see everybody at once. I apologize. I'm David Hackelman, and you might notice that there's a district in Albany named the Hackelman District. I'm connected to those folks, but I'm a little bit younger, not much. And I've lived in the Corvallis area since about I was here for college, and then in 1978, I came back after getting another degree since I didn't want to work. And then I retired from Hewlett Packard and from Oregon State. And I happen to have a piece of property that's directly to the north of the landfill, and you might see my dome on the top of the hill.
My name is Matt Directors. I'm the longtime, actually lived in Lynn County for a good majority of my life. Sitting small time up in Seattle, don't use that against me. For about 8 years, but came back and then lived in Benton County for a little while before moving back into Lynn. Worked for the city of Albany. I'm their community development director. Was actually encouraged to apply for this position, as a few people felt that I would be good for it. I don't come into it with any preconceived notions, much like Brent mentioned, coming into it with kind of open eyes and interested in hearing public comments and making sure that obviously those are heard as we move forward. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Field. I have lived in Corvallis since 1992 when I took my first faculty job at Oregon State University. I've had a research program in per and polyfluoroalkyl substances since 1995. So kind of considered a pioneer both nationally and internationally on the subject matter. And that's included studies on the mass flow of PFAS in Corvallis wastewater treatment plant. So that's one of the first studies in 2006 in the world that really look at PFAS and lack of treatment. And then also recent studies on landfill leachate and landfill gas. So not the air down, but actually the gas emitting itself. So I hope to bring some data-driven perspective, but also to learn and understand what it's like to be at the public interface. So I understand how important the community is. I'm only maybe three miles south of the landfill myself and see it on a daily basis when I enjoy E.E. Wilson as a recreation site.
Can we, well, actually, Ian, I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
can jump in if you want.
Yeah.
So I'm Ian McNabb. I work for Republic Services. I've been at Coffin Butte since 2008. So right when Republic first took over the site. Longtime resident of the area, but I'm just a little farther north. I live in Dallas, so not too terribly far away. Yeah, I lived here pretty much since I was 2, so basically all my life. I mean, my goal really is just open dialogue and education. The landfill is a lot more complex than a lot of the general public realizes, and just the amount of engineering and construction that goes into it, and just helping get that word out to the community.
Thank you. Can we move to the audience?
Sure. Sorry, I'm Julie Jackson. I work for Public Services as a municipal manager. I've worked with the company about 19 years, and I've worked with Benton County all of those 19 years.
My name is Brian Root. I also work for Public Services. I'm out of our area office in Washington. I'm Brent Davis. I'm the general manager for Western Oregon for Republic Services. I've been in my role for about 2 years, but I've worked with Republic for about 8.
Nancy Wise, one of your Benton County Commissioners.
I'm Ray with TAC Video. I'm the Benton County Safety Officer.
I'm Rick Quaker, I'm the assistant administrator in Benton County.
Thank you all.
Hey, Bailey, should we do the folks online then?
Oh, sure.
You can't unmute.
Oh.
You have to unmute them. They're not able to unmute.
There's Petra though. Petra's.
Is it my turn? Hi, my name is Petra Sheets. I'm the interim community development director here at Benton County. And I'm also here for about 6 months. I was hired as the county's first planning director. I have about 20 years experience as a planning director. I've also been a public works director for 6 years, including the installation of the city of Coburg's first wastewater system. So I do have some experience on the science and technology side of wastewater management, and as well as city management, almost 10 years experience in that arena. And as a part of my relationship with DSAC is I'll be collaborating with Ken in terms of developing the agendas for this. And DSAC is one of 4 of the community development's citizen or committees that we have in the department. And I really look forward to continuing robust, positive, and productive conversations as we move forward on solid waste management issues. So thank you. Looking forward to it.
Is there anyone else online who would like to introduce themselves?
Able to unmute.
And apparently they're not able to unmute.
Oh,
The way
I
the
guess I did request that. I didn't know we were going to be doing this, so I'm sorry about that. Let's see. So my name is Ken Eklund. I've been on DSAC for over 2 years now, I guess. And I've been a resident in Oregon since 2015. I live in Soap Creek Valley. By profession, I'm a game designer. One of the things I'm interested in as a game designer is kind of creating engines of participation. So ways in which people can engage, with government or with issues, particularly if they want to kind of look into the future, get a handle on what the future might be. Getting a bunch of people together to kind of think about that in a kind of very open, collaborative structure, a very game-like playful structure, works pretty well. So I can't say exactly why I'm here in DSAC other than, my interest in the landfill. As engines of participation goes, I think the DSAC structure, kind of leaves a lot to be desired compared to some other games I've played. But I do the best I can. It'd be interesting to think about how the the citizen committees could kind of be revamped so that they would be a little more fun.
I think that we have introduced everyone, so if you're ready, Chair, we can move to the first presentation of the night.
I forgot to point out that I'm a chemist and engineer. I thought that might be nice to know, and I had some projects of students at the landfill over the years working on energy extraction.
We do have some time left in this agenda item I think there's another goal, which is asking questions about the committee and its goals. And I did have a couple of questions. Maybe Rachel, are you coming back or are you headed out? Are you headed out?
Is you a question to me?
Yeah, well, it might be one that you're best equipped to answer, which is, I think the conditional use permit is the thing that the community is probably going to be most vocal about. And I was trying to figure out where DSAC's kind of scope it ends and where the Solid Waste Advisory Committee's scope begins.
Right.
Because our bylaws do include like reviewing with Republic the site.
Right.
So can you kind of clear that up?
Actually, Petra is on. I think Petra would probably be the best, role of that. I'm not the council, so that is one of my, the council isn't here today.
I raised it because you mentioned the conditional use. I thought
Sean? What? No. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna go to Petra. Are you around? Is she still on? No, she's not.
Yes, I'm here.
My understanding with the conditional land use approach is right now, it's with the planning commission, correct? It hasn't even gotten to them. We're still in review with our consultant after the application.
Oh, yes, we're still going through our completeness review.
Right. So when would DSAC be able to comment or talk about the land use application?
Well, as a body, they would be considered a public entity. So they're welcome to as soon as the public comment period is open. I don't know when that's going to be because the completeness check is not done. But when the completeness check is complete, that'll start a 150-day period where we will then schedule tentative public hearings. So after the completeness check is done, we'll start to schedule when the public hearing will be done. The next step is that we'll go out for agency referral. We'll give all of our agency referral folks approximately a month to look at the application. At this time, the application is about 1,200 pages. So we want to give folks like DEQ and ODF&W that at least a month to look at the application. And also it's NRAC, and I'm sorry, Bailey, can you please tell me what the acronym stands for? They've been charged.
Actually, we have Sean that leads it here. The Environment and Natural Resource Committee.
Okay, yeah, they've been charged by the county to be the county entity, to be the official body to look at the application on behalf of the county from an environmental perspective, as kind of as an agency referral partner to comment on the application. But DSAC or any other entity can comment during the public comment period and be on the record. I will open up the public comment period for as long as I can, as soon as we understand when we're going to have the public hearing. And so it should be at least a couple months for people to have written comments, and the written comment period will be open up to 1 week before the public hearing. The reason is that all those written comments will be on the record and put into the packet 1 week before, and all the written comments that are in the packet or can't be put in the packet that is posted will be handed to the Planning Commission at the meeting. And then there will also be an opportunity for verbal public testimony at the meeting, of course. So that will be another opportunity for public testimony, verbal public testimony. And the Planning Commission will give as many people as much time as they need to give public comment. And the Planning Commission chair, this is probably too much information, but the Planning Commission chair is anticipating a lot of interest. So he's indicated that he'd like to set up a series of meetings over 1 week so that, you know, if there's 1 or 2 hours worth of public testimony, we'll go one day, another day, a third day consecutively so that everybody can be heard and that we don't have to wait for, you know, iterative months just to get through the public testimony period. And so that they also have kind of a compressed time so that they can do deliberations within a 1 month period, but that we give everybody ample time to give the verbal testimony. So I hope that answers the question, but we're going to give as much time as possible for folks to give both written and verbal testimony.
So Petra, you know what it is? I think we're jumping ahead. So Bailey has a wonderful presentation that he worked very hard on, which is
sorry.
Orientation, what their roles and responsibilities are, and where things will be fit in. But I think it was really important because of, as I discussed in my opening remarks, this application is on all our minds. And it will be heavily there, but we're also, I think we're gonna try to give the scope and the rules of the road of where we are here. And it wouldn't hurt, I know we did a pretty good job with some FAQs with a website that could kind of help folks understand and navigate some of the other organizations like NRAC. There's something called SMMP. Government loves acronyms. I don't. I'm one of the people who are like, spell it out. So please, especially as volunteer board members, and especially because this is being streamed, stop us if we start using DSAC or a word that other folks don't feel comfortable with, and we will back up. And I also refer to Republic Services, the same thing. When we say DEQ, tell us what DEQ is. This is what an orientation is. It's important, but we all do it. We're all at fault, but it would be a learning lesson for those for everyone if we can try to not use any synonyms. It's not fair to the rest of us, this new people.
Yes.
So,
my apologies. The short of it is we don't know when the public hearing is going to be because we have not completed our completeness check. It will probably be sometime in the fall.
Okay, thanks, Petra. I was just trying to figure out where we kind of slot into the process.
Yeah.
So I would like to kind of pull the conversation back to the agenda item that we're on. So this is really, for the committee members to, have a conversation with each other and just get to know each other a little bit before we move on to orientation and move on to the annual report, et cetera. I know we've kind of been around the table one time, so to speak, and I know it's a little difficult because, for me at least, because I'm here online and not actually there in the room. But what questions do the committee members have, particularly the new ones, about, I don't know, the process or, the what the committee has in the queue, what, kind of what are our hopes and dreams? I think some conversation like that would just kind of icebreaker conversation would be nice. We still have a bit of time in this agenda item. Does that make sense to anyone? Is there anyone who can speak to that, or am I pushing us out of our comfort zone?
Well, I have another question that might, I'm curious, like how the veteran committee members have been engaging with the public so far. Like, what kind of shape has that taken?
Any Brent or Chuck?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what was the question? It was a leading question.
How have you been engaging with the public so far?
Pretty good. Let's see. Well, even though I may have been here longer than most, I was with SWAC and DSAC for a while. Then I was nice to be on Benton, the Talks Trash Committee for a while. And then short sabbatical to adjust your brains again. So I got the shortest time in here, even with the new members. But to answer your question, usually each meeting, the chair opens it up for what used to be practice is any comments from the public, and that gives them the opportunity to voice. And then it also gives us a little time to ask questions to the chairman and stuff like that. So that's kind of a nice resolution or seeing where we come. Sometimes, you say one thing, I mean something else. So it breaks down that wall for further discussions. And I think if that still will be employed, I think that's real good instead of just getting a list sometimes with 50 questions on it. You have to kind of, what is that they're really asking? And then when we have that open discussion, that's really beneficial to see what the priority is of that individual. Yeah, if I've answered your question.
But I feel pretty comfortable right now. So I think one of the things that's important for us to do, and I want to see if this is what everybody agrees, is to, like it says here for our bylaws, provide a forum for community comments. And one of the things I know is that people may send in many comments, and some of those can be distilled into 2 or 3 fundamental items so that we can kind of help make that happen so that then those can be addressed. So I think that'd be kind of one useful thing we can do, and see if there's anything that comes from that as to how we proceed for the future. I'm not sure whether we all have a common feeling for what our vision for the future is right yet, but I think Bailey's going to help us with that. And from there we go. I also noticed that we do prepare an annual report, and I'm not sure when it's due yet. I suspect it won't be until later this year. And I'm not sure how the mechanics of that is performed. So.
We'll be,
So if I could make, sorry, if I could make a request, if people could identify themselves before they start speaking, it would really help me out.
That was David Hackelman.
Yeah, thank you, David. I can answer your questions about the annual report. So right now the committee is backlogged. It is still working on its 2021 annual report. And this isn't the fault of the committee. The committee has been, over the past year and a half, 2 years, has really been prevented from working on the annual reports for those years. So we haven't yet sent in the 2021, although we have a draft that I hope we'll look at next meeting. But that means we also owe the 2022 annual report, and now 2023 has concluded, so we also owe that one. So, and the annual reports are, that's a charge which is given to us by state law. And so kind of how we see fit to do that, there are, it is up to us really. There are examples from the past, although not a lot of them. No one has been able to find an annual report submitted for the year 2019 or earlier. There is one that exists for the year 2020, and that's the only one that we know of that's been submitted. So we can kind of look at that as an example. But so it is indeed kind of a situation, like I said, where the committee really can kind of define what it wants. And I would just say that, as an annual report about the community concerns, it really should, be something that you could that we will send to the community and say, hey, we captured your concerns and here's the report about them. And the community would be saying, yeah, okay, you did a good job.
Okay, so I'm happy to help on this, but I want to know how responsibilities for such a report are going to be, sent out to the committee members. Is that going to be something that you're going to do?
I'm sorry, David, are you talking to me?
Yes, Ken.
Okay, yeah. I wish I were there, but I have COVID, so you don't wish I was there. That also remains to be seen. What happened with the 2020 annual report is the staff compiled it for the committee, and so the committee reviewed that and approved that and sent it in. For the 2021 annual report, the staff compiled one which the committee was not happy with. And so it went back to staff. Staff eventually said, we're not going to do it. We'll send it over to the committee. And so the committee then worked on it, and that's how that draft has been done. So the answer is it's happened both ways in the past. Where staff has prepared a draft and then the committee looks at it and edits it or approves it, kind of whatever it needs. And also one where the staff has really turned that back over to the committee to be done. And so the committee has indeed, figured out how to divide up the work and get that done.
Thank you.
And math director's here. So I on that note, I do have a question. It seems, given my line of work and very familiar with I think my work group in community development, we've got 4 or 5 different community advisory groups or committees that it would seem, to me at least, really odd that the work of kind of compiling the report would be placed back on the committee, especially as a volunteer committee. That seems, I'm just speaking my thoughts, is that seems very, very unique, and something that I'm not familiar with, and I'm not sure if be interested in hearing from Bailey if if that's kind of the thought process moving forward, that this committee would be compiling that, or is the county anticipating doing that work? To me, you're compiling public comment is pretty factual, right? You know, you're taking those comments, putting it into a report that doesn't take a good amount of discretion, as long as you're factually capturing what the public comments were, and so that we can pass them on to the commissioners. So it's, at least that's my view of it, and would love to be corrected if I've got that wrong, so.
Matthew, and Ken, this Bailey speaking, I've drafted the 2021 report, and then I realized that Ken had a different version, so I'm melding those two together to be sure that we capture all the community complaints. I've already started to draft the 2022, and I expect that I'll have something to present to you, and then you can make changes to it, or what the committee decides.
Again, Matthew, in that process, you know, for newer members especially, we're kind of, you know, a little bit behind the curtain in that we weren't here for a lot of that public comment. Certainly it's out there that we can review to make sure that it matches, but you know, obviously we'll be looking at some of the legacy members to make sure that a lot of those comments were captured. As you know, I'm not sure of the willingness of the committee, and certainly we will, if we need to, is going back and reviewing the things that weren't written comment, if there were public comment that occurred in previous DSACs, you know, going back and watching those meetings to make sure everything was captured. So it's kind of puts us in a little bit of a disadvantage of not having been on the committee during those times. So it's just acknowledging that.
I can relate.
Yeah, certainly been here for some time. I understand that.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. I mean, all your comments are very perceptive and right on target, I think. The situation with the 2021 annual report is that was indeed the year that Republic submitted its first application, first landfill expansion application. And so there were a lot of public comments. So that is, I think, has been kind of part of the difficulty about that. I think staff was just not really willing to go back and, review all the videos and, look at all the written comments and whatever, because there were, hundreds of comments being made. But that has been done, kind of like you said, and so there is indeed, and I'm not sure what Bailey's process is, working with the 2021. I can just say that the draft generated by the committee did indeed, go back and do that work.
Thank you.
So Ken, quick question. Where's the, the draft version of the 2021 report? Is that out there published, or is that still waiting for review? I mean, is that going to be before this committee to be reviewed, or is that something that you're working on based on the work you did in 21?
That draft, as a matter of fact, I'll send it to all of you at the conclusion of this meeting. And Bailey, can we attach the draft 2021 annual report, as a document for this meeting?
Yes, but I would like to add to it. So I'll include any findings that I've come across that are that should be added to the report that you've and other committee members have put together.
So I would like to just have it added the way it is right now. That's because that's what we're talking about. I mean, at our next meeting, we will look at, you know, the updated version, if you will, you know, with the additions and whatever kind of editing you think is appropriate to be done. But I just want to get I want to get this version captured because I'm not sure, although I've tried to get it entered into the public record before now, I'm not sure that it actually ever made it. So if, I would just like to have it attached, you know, this is the one that I sent you. So, and I'll send it to all the committee members as soon as we conclude this Zoom call.
Actually, Ken, I think that's better if staff sends that out. So I'll do that following the meeting.
Okay. So we have indeed used up the group introductions time. I think it's time to roll into the next item. Well, before I move on, are there any more questions by committee members or anything else that anyone would like to say kind of in the group introductions? You know, do people just want to kind of give a quick thumbs up or thumbs down on how the experience has been so far?
Can you see our thumbs?
No, I can't.
Yeah, thumbs are up.
It's mostly for you all there, so sorry.
Actually, before we move on, I don't think we had Alyssa introduce herself. We did the audience members and people.
My name is Alyssa Thompson. I'm a recorder. I've been with Benton County almost a year.
All right, gang, should we move on? Bailey, do you want to move into the introduction, the orientation? I'm sorry.
Hey, well, again, my name is Bailey Payne, and I'm a solid waste program coordinator is my title. And I'm going to give you a brief, kind of quick summary, give you a little bit more background on what DSAC does, and give you a little overview as well of solid waste as it's managed in Benton County. The first slide that we're about to come to with you can tell I'm a soccer fan because I've got a couple soccer pictures in here. But this first slide, coming in a moment. I'd just like everyone to just read that on your own, and I'll just give you a few moments to do that. Great, thank you. We can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the ORS, Oregon Revised Statutes, Benton County's code, a little bit about solid waste and how it's managed in Benton County. Then I'll talk about the DSAC, specifically what the role of the members of DSAC is, and then we'll talk a little bit about meetings at the end. And Alyssa, I'm ready for the next. The next slide, whenever you're ready. There we go. Can somebody read that for? No, I'm kidding. I wanted to put this up here. The Oregon Revised Statutes are the rules laid out in the state of Oregon and the section 459 is what covers the solid waste topics. It's about, I don't know, 100 pages or so. It's not real page turning information for the most part. So if you click the next one there. So I distilled down some of the, in the packet that I'd sent you earlier. Thank you. I distilled it down to just the information that's critical for you to know. So this information's linked here and you've already received it, but the actual amount of reading isn't quite as bad. There are 2 pages worth of text that make sense for you to review, and it's where the DSAC, the Disposal Site Advisory Councils, when those are required and what's required of them. Benton County Code Chapter 23 also touches on solid waste. There are about 16 pages there for your reading. And then Chapter 77 of Benton County Code has a couple pages there that I recommended. This graph is kind of depressing, but I want to point it out to give you an overview. The bottom number that you see there is the total amount of tons that are recovered within Benton County. So that means everything that was composted, recycled, recovered for energy, those sorts of things. And you can see that we've taken a little bit of a dip in the last couple of years in terms of how much stuff, how many tons of stuff that we're recycling or composting. That it's going down isn't necessarily a bad thing in that graph, but then when you jump up to the next one, the orange, that shows how much we're disposing of as a county. So that's Benton County from year to year, how much garbage we're throwing away. And so you can see that it's angled upward. So we're generating now more garbage as a county than we ever have before. When you look at the blue line at the top, that is the total amount of things that we consume and then either throw away, compost, recycle, or throw in the garbage. So that's everything that we've generated. And the reason that that's concerning to me to see that line going upward is that when you look at materials, the lion's share of the environmental impact that materials have on the environment, almost all of it for most products occurs when they extract the natural resources to make these products. And then when they manufacture these things, it takes a lot of energy. There's pollution associated with manufacturing. And so that it's continuing to go up is something that I'm a little concerned about. Our recycling rate is that second from the top, the darker blue line there. And you can see that our recycling rate is our most recent one in 2022 was 31.5%. And so that's about as low as it's been since we started keeping track of things. And so that really tells me that we've got some work to do on getting the community, and that's both residential as well as businesses. So it's all of the waste that's generated, and what gets recycled or composted is a little over 30%. I didn't want to leave it on a totally dark note. This is looking at pounds per person in Benton County. So we're not as bad on an individual basis because, of course, the population continues to increase. And so that's why this 2022 number is not off the charts as higher than all these previous years because it factors in the population of the county at the time. So the average in 2022, the average person in Benton County threw away 4.6 pounds of garbage a day and recycled 2.1 pounds or composted 2.1 pounds of stuff a day on average. And total amount then is 6.7 pounds per person per day. And you might be thinking to yourself, there's no way the average person generates 6.7 pounds of stuff every day. But remember that factors in businesses as well, because businesses wouldn't exist if we weren't buying and using their services. So this captures everything. Coffin Butte's one of a handful of regional landfills in Oregon. A regional landfill is defined as accepting 75,000 or more tons a year from outside its immediate area. Coffin Butte's been a regional landfill since records were officially kept back in 1992 and perhaps before then as well. You can see, so these numbers are showing where regional landfills are located in Oregon. It used to be that there were many, many landfills all over the state and really all over the nation, lots of real small ones that didn't have the environmental protections that a current modern landfill does. And so in many years ago in the 80s and early 90s, the EPA passed the RCRA laws, and that basically kind of clamped down and prohibited those small landfills that didn't have those environmental systems in place from continuing. So it sort of conglomerated or it created landfills that were much larger. However, they have safety mechanisms to protect the groundwater and air and such. So the largest ones are the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 3 is Roosevelt landfill just across the gorge, and Republic Services owns that one. The others are owned by other entities, but that's where a lot of the garbage, most of the garbage from Portland goes out to those eastern landfills. And eventually, down the road, when Coffin Butte eventually closes, that's going to be something that Benton County is going to have to deal with too, and think about where we're going to send our waste. And but it's certainly going to be a lot further. This is looking at how much waste is accepted at Coffin Butte each year. You can see in 2016, 17, it really started to climb up. So there's a cap on within the current contract of the 1.1 million tons a year that Republic Services can take at Coffin Butte landfill. By the way, too, you might in the reading and other places sometimes see it referred to as valley landfills. And Valley Landfills was the historical owner of the Coffin Butte landfill, and Republic Services now owns Valley Landfills. And so if you see those two names, you can use them synonymously. When you, at the map below, you can see which counties are contributing waste to Coffin Butte. And the blue ones you can kind of, for our purposes, kind of ignore because it's really not very significant how much waste they're sending to Coffin Butte. The ones in red are the ones that are sending more material to Coffin Butte. Benton County is in orange, so we're sending about 10% of, or I mean, we contribute about 10% of what Coffin Butte accepts every year. So let's talk about what you signed up for. So who can serve on DSAC? Well, this is all of you, of course. Residents residing near or adjacent to the regional disposal site. So David, for example, his property immediately borders the landfill. And so he's someone that we want to serve on the committee, and others that live nearby. I think, Jennifer, you'd said that you live fairly close to it as well. We also, it could be just somebody that owns property in Benton County or lives in Benton County. And then this is important, the employees of the franchisee or the permittee. So that being Republic Services. In Benton County's chapter 23 of the code, which I'm sure you've all read, it says 1 or 2 employees of Republic Services are appointed to the committee. It's the intent of the Board of Commissioners that these permittee members will assist DSAC in reviewing the regional disposal site and responding to community comments, questions, and concerns, and will assist in promoting a constructive forum for dialogue between the community, DSAC, and the owners and operators of the regional disposal site. So Ian, thank you for representing and being able to share with us. We're lucky to have Ian on DSAC because he really understands intimately all of the processes and the engineering and all this complicated stuff that goes on at the landfill. The purpose of DSAC, so this is the specific thing spelled out for us to do, is review the siting, the operation, closure, and long-term monitoring of the landfill, provide a forum for community comments, questions, and concerns about the regional disposal site, and promote a dialogue between the community and Republic Services. So the intent is that this is a place of harmony where we can ask tough questions and get good feedback from one another and from the landfill to be able to educate on the systems that they have in place. Prepare an annual report, and this is what Ken was talking about earlier in the meeting. To summarize the local community concerns and in the manner in which Republic Services is addressing those concerns. The Community Development Department will submit the report to the Department of Environmental Quality. Is Rachel still here? and then the Benton Board of Commissioners. DSAC may undertake other tasks and duties as directed by the Benton County Board of Commissioners. So what do the Board of Commissioners expect from DSAC? They want an advisory council that's attuned to the county's 2040 thriving communities. And this is something that I sent you all in the original packet of reading to do. The board expects core values and focus areas within the thriving communities document, and helping to move initiatives forward and providing reasoned recommendations on appropriate topics. The board expects committees to work cooperatively and be responsive to the public while also making progress on board priorities. So what is my role, or staff's role, us? We organize the DSAC meetings, provide DSAC with relevant information so that you all can make good decisions. So if I come across articles and things that seem relevant, those are things that I would pass along to you. My role is to work on the solid waste materials management programs in Benton County and to implement the things that are outlined in Chapter 23. Also to make recommendations to my supervisors as well as the Board of Commissioners and compile reports that are required to submit annually to the Department of Environmental Quality. I'm going to skip that one for now. Here's another one of my soccer pictures. A quorum. So I wasn't sure a good picture to use for quorum, so I came up with this. A quorum is the majority of sitting members, and it's required for official action and voting. So that's the key part. If we don't have enough people here, then the committee cannot make official actions or vote on things. So that's why attendance is important. I apologize for this slide. The agendas are created by the Director of Community Development and the DSAC Chair. Per the bylaws and the Board of Commissioners direction, the Community Development Director makes the final decision on the agenda, but the idea is to do it in collaboration with the chair. And likewise, if any of you have agenda topics that you feel need to be added, please do speak up so that we can plan to put those on the agendas as we develop them. Let's see, the agendas will cover mandated topics, progress on projects, information sharing, The public comment is going to be limited to ensure that the DSAC has time for other scheduled business, but there will be time for public input going forward. At this orientation meeting, we decided not to invite public input quite yet, and at the next meeting, we'll begin hearing directly from the public. When the public does comment, the group should not discuss that particular topic unless it's germane to the agenda, an agenda item. Discussions can be added to the end of that meeting's agenda if time allows, or to subsequent meetings agendas. Scheduled topics will take priority before moving on to new topics. If there's a need for more public input on a topic, DSAC may schedule a separate meeting for that purpose. Bring agenda items to the chair and Benton County staff at least 2 weeks ahead of the meetings when possible. Now, you may not always have 2 full weeks to get that done, but if you can get it to us 2 weeks ahead of the next meeting, it makes it easier to try and rework the agenda to include your topic. I guess I just did that one. Each agenda includes time near the end for members to request topics to be added to future agendas. Emails from DSAC members regarding DSAC business should go directly to staff and not to other DSAC members. Then staff can take all that information, consolidate it, and distribute it to all the members. And then this is an important one as well. Meetings with other DSAC members outside of these scheduled meetings that we have. Members may not meet in a quorum and discuss DSAC business outside of public meetings. And it's best to avoid discussing DSAC business or agenda items with other members outside of the meetings. If DSAC members meet outside of the meetings, you just need to be sure that you don't have a quorum present and you're not discussing DSAC business. If you're at a baseball game, you're just having fun, great. But we need to be careful about public meeting laws that we don't have meetings on the side that don't involve all voices. And that is the end of my presentation.
Can we ask one question?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, that first graph was excellent. And I see it's just for Benton County, but I was half asleep when I was reading the scale and I thought it was only 120,000. And I know that Carlton Butte brings in 1.2 or 1.1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering, is other counties making graphs like that so we can compare if there's good scout or bad scout in the mix?
I should say most of the other counties do that kind of analysis as well.
Oh, okay.
And if you're interested, the Department of Environmental Quality publishes a report each year. The Opportunity to Recycle report.
I just don't trust the DEQ sometimes. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and that's where I get my information from.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And Bailey, this is Jennifer. Did you say that our contribution is only 10%?
Correct.
So that's our specs on our 10%.
Mm-hmm.
9%. It's from the other counties listed.
Right.
Okay. And then on that increase, is it possible from a public intervention point of view to understand, like break that out? Are there any breakouts like, oh, that's food waste, or is there a way to know, because you might direct your efforts and outreach if you knew what that big increase, relatively large increase recently was due to?
Yeah, I think that was a result primarily of Marion County shifting their, they'd been sending all of their waste to, or virtually all of it, to a energy from waste facility or waste energy facility in Brooks. And some years ago around then, they decided to to change up what they were doing, and now they're sending about 1/3 of their waste to that facility and 2/3 of their waste down here to Coffin Butte. One thing to point out to the group is that Benton County doesn't have the ability to dictate where the waste comes from. The county is through the franchise and through the contract with Republic Services has an upper limit of how much waste they can accept, but not where they can accept it from.
Yeah. This is Dave Hackelman. So I guess one question I have is I think in this, it states that any and all waste that Benton County has is to be provided for by this landfill system. So all the other counties or whatever else is added, is that correct? So we kind of like have a priority on our materials being dispensed with?
I think the answer is yes, but
yeah,
yes. I see Julie nodding her head that.
But still, like you pointed out, don't read your name. So, see, Jennifer pointed out, it's interesting to see that the last few years have been a trend that's not in the direction we'd like to see.
Yeah.
For our county.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have another question, Jennifer. NREC, let's go with what is that? And then what is our relationship with that group or community? Or is there one?
I'm going to ask Sean McGuire to put him on the spot. Sean's the sustainability coordinator for the county.
So the Environment and Natural Areas Advisory Committee is NREC. With the commission made a decision that SWAC, Solid Waste Advisory Committee, is on hold while the Sustainable Materials Management Plan, Bailey and I are doing on number 4. So, sorry, so and that's why NREC is looking at the first step to provide comment to the Planning Commission and recommendation on the application. That's the only role of NREC that has anything to do with solid waste. So it was an exchange. The document that the commissioners signed or passed is just this one item that NREC is going to be doing in Lewis Flag. So that's really the only thing that's, and exactly as Petra said, all committees can provide comment. It's just that's where their play is. Does that answer your question?
I think so, thanks.
They're making it more confusing, or?
That's all right, I think that helps for now.
Okay, cool.
Good question. So, Matt Directors, Bailey, you mentioned that for as a regional facility, which is dictated by the amount of waste that the Republic chooses to receive from outside counties. That's a designation that's received just based on the quantity that they receive, right? And that Benton County doesn't have the ability to dictate whether or not they receive waste from counties outside of our area. But is that and this is a question is, well, Benton County doesn't have the ability, certainly it's not Benton County's site, it being, privately held to Republic. Does Republic have the ability to say that we're not going to accept waste from Marion County or Washington County or some of the other bigger haulers that are bringing trash in? That's just a question out of my own ignorance is, while Benton County may not, does Republic Services have the ability to do that?
I imagine that they do. With that said, they probably also have contracts in place that could be many years out. So contractually, they're probably obligated. Ian, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, probably some of our operations team can expand on it, but yes, we have existing contracts in place with a whole range of municipalities across the Willamette Valley.
Rachel Purcell, I was just curious how often the franchise agreement is renegotiated. Because it seems like we're already past some of the expansion years.
I should know that off the top of my head, and I apologize that I don't.
It's 20 years.
Okay, I was debating if it was 10 or 20. I couldn't remember. Thank you.
It was renewed in 2020.
Okay.
Just a follow-up question, Chuck Gilbert, even though that Benton County, or I mean, Republic is here, it doesn't prohibit it sending it to another area, providing Republic is responsive to that. What I'm saying is that even this one we can't intervene in, but reciprocally, the other one's regional landfills is the same status. So they have to receive their solid waste because they're a regional landfill. So they bring some Washington stuff over into them. Not to say that's good or bad, but that's just how the mix is ran in Oregon, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah. Yep. Some landfills are owned by the county themselves. Short Mountain landfill in Eugene is an example of that. And because the county owns that landfill, they can restrict how much they're taking and or only take it from within their county to extend the life of their landfill. Whereas other landfills are private industry is the one that owns them. And so there's, it's up to them as private businesses.
I was referencing, if you mind, the regional landfills that are permitted by DEQ. Reciprocally, they're the same in that status, where some of the other ones are a little different, but since they receive X amount too, they're in the same ballgame.
Yeah.
So one more question, if I may. So who sets the cap on the total amount annual waste into the landfill?
That's set through the franchise agreement and through the contract with Republic Services.
So the franchise agreement sets that number.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Yes, and I think it's important to note that in the franchise agreement, that cap is in place until Republic gets an expansion. If Republic gets an expansion, any expansion of the landfill, then the cap is removed.
So that begs the question, if you will, Chuck Gilbert, how was the original cap put in as a proceeding, I guess? If it can be put in, I guess it can be put out, but I'm not sure how it was originally put in, under what conditions or auspices, if you will.
Yeah, I wasn't around.
Absolutely question to Republic.
Well, it was part of the negotiations at the time. I wasn't involved with it, so I don't have a lot of information, but I know it was part of that franchise agreement negotiations with the county at the time.
Okay, so if it was agreed with the county, then that could be put on the table again. I'm not sure, I'm just analytically it's correct, but I'm just kicking it around.
So here's how I think about it. So a limit can be put on the amount of garbage and where it comes from as part of a business arrangement, which is kind of what the franchise agreement is. The part that can't be done is the county can't legislate that Republic is limited in its ability to do commerce. So it's protected by the Commerce Clause. So, and garbage in this case is actually, seen as business. So it's perfectly fine, as in kind of a business way for the county to negotiate as it did in 2020. I mean, the county could have then negotiated for a limited service area for the landfill. It did not do that, but it could have. And if the franchise agreement came back up for some reason, there was some renegotiation, then those sorts of things could indeed be put on the table at that time. It's just that the Benton County can't use, its legislative power to create laws to limit commerce. So it's kind of actually a very restricted prohibition, if you will. So are we done with orientation, Bailey?
Yes, thank you. Unless there are any other questions.
I think we should move on. I think we're running a little bit behind here. Is Republic ready for the annual report presentation?
Yeah, we are. I was going to invite Brett and Julie. I'm not sure how all of us going to come up with the mic at least. Sure, you get the driver. We're not at the beginning. No, we're not. You drove too fast.
I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Bailey did. I'll just move on till someone tells me to stop.
Yeah, okay, so I'll take this. So these are just some high points about, Coffin Butte and Western Oregon and the things that we do. As you'll see from these numbers, I'm not gonna go over every single number, but I'm gonna hit some high points. In total, Coffin Butte has about 740 acres, and we currently only have 24% of that property for active disposal. So it's about 178 acres. 40 acres which we manage as wetlands, and 45 which are closed and capped permanently. We have a very robust gas system that Ian will talk about here in just a little bit, where we're really proud of the amount of money we've invested over the last 3 to 5 years into that gas system. It's 3 times industry standard, and what you'll hear is that on average, landfills have about 1 gas well per acre, and in Coffin Butte we have 3 gas wells per acre. So with that gas, we partner with PNGC on site. They've got a generator plant where they pull off enough gas to power about 4,000 homes a year. And another number on here that we are really proud of is the diversion opportunity. So if you look down on the lower right, we produce, or actually we pull out about 140,000 tons a year of yard debris into Pacific Region Compost, where we make compost, ag grade compost for local farmers, and another product which we call trommel base, which we sell to customers like Scott's Agriculture, where they bag and sell out to Home Depot, Lowe's, things like that. So a lot of good information there, a lot of good things that we do. Up in the top left, it talks about, that we've got 97 employees. That's really just with the Corvallis Hauling Division and with Coffin Butte Landfill. But in Western Oregon, we employ over 300 employees just with Republic Services. I'll talk a little bit about landfill capacity. I'm not going to hit all those numbers. There's lots of questions about capacity. Currently, we've got about 3/4 of a year left in our current cell, and the airspace existing in the rock quarry with the expansion that we're asking for would give us about 18 years of life. So that's kind of where we're at with the current capacity of the landfill. If we don't get the expansion, that's about 6 years. So we've got about 12 to 13 years of life left at the landfill. Who wants to take this one as far as I can speak to it.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wasn't in my role in 21 when we did our initial request for expansion, so I wasn't super familiar with that, but I do know where we're at now and what we're asking for. So some of the key aspects of our request is that we're asking for a 50% smaller expansion than we did in 21. So this will give us 6 years versus 12. We're also protecting and improving Coffin Butte Road. I know there was a lot of concern back then about potentially closing the road. So we're going to leave the road open and have a turn lane, add some bike lanes to help with some traffic concerns. Of course, increased transparency and communication with the community and responsiveness. There's been a lot of talk about improving vegetation, and I know that that's part of our CUP process is improved screening and vegetation along Highway 99 to help block the view of the landfill. Containment of the landfill's working face and disposal area of the landfill, and then continuous, reliable and affordable disposal capacity while the county aligns with a solid material management plan.
You want to talk about the map at all?
Yeah, so, as you can see the map, I'm not good at talking. I'm a touchy person. So this is the white area is the existing landfill. We're actually filling a cell up in the top left corner right now. The dark color to the left is the existing quarry that Knife River is mining rock out of. And we're actually developing a cell right now that kind of comes across this area right in. So about where this point is across up into this corner. So it's actually a really difficult cell for us because of some elevation changes there. But we're working on that, and we expect to be into that part of the cell first quarter of next year, I believe, is when we start anticipating that. So this area here that you see, that's the area that we feel with the current volume that we got about 12 to 13 years. And then directly south across Coffin Butte Road, this is the expansion area that we're talking. And how many acres is that? Was that like 70?
No, it's 40 some. I don't recall the exact number.
Yeah, so I couldn't remember exactly, but it's about 46 acres, I believe. So this is the proposed expansion area just south of Coffin Butte Road.
I'll take it over from here. Brett stole a little bit of my talk already.
Yeah.
So we talked about some of this, but so gas control system is one of the important environmental systems we have at Coffin Butte for collecting the landfill gas. Brett hit on a little bit, but we run about just over 3 times as many wells per acre as the industry standard. And this is a system that we expand on and improve every single year. Since 2019, we've invested just under $9.5 billion in investments. David may be aware, but we're currently in the middle of an expansion project right now. So we have crews on site that are drilling 14 new vertical wells and then installing 18 horizontal wells across the site. Again, this is part of our partnership with PNG Power, where they pull the gas and burn it in large Caterpillar engines to generate electricity for about 4,000 homes. And then, yeah, Brett already hit on this, but PRC diverts a lot of organics that would have gone to the landfill. And so by diverting those organics, you're reducing the overall methane that can be generated from the landfill, because the methane is generated by the organics breaking down. Next slide. So a little more about methane and air quality. So Republic is a sustainability company, and we do recognize the big importance of reducing greenhouse gases over time. That's a lot of company initiatives across the country, not just locally. We recognize that there are new technologies that are emerging for aerial monitoring of sites with drones and satellites and such. Currently, though, EPA is very specific in that you must use their emission monitoring methods, where it's a technician walking basically a grid across the site at a prescribed route. So at the national level, though, we are actively engaged with groups like Carbon Mapper and the EPA to come up with new monitoring techniques, more efficient ways of collecting gas, and just overall improving the efficiency of landfill gas collection systems. So next slide. This is a summary of the permits that Coffin Butte currently maintains. We were inspected by multiple different state and government agencies last year and were not issued any violations. We can complete semi-annual groundwater monitoring across the site at a network of wells that DEQ approves, so they approve the location and what you monitor at the wells. So we completed that monitoring in April and October of last year. It includes testing for a whole range of volatile or organic compounds, metals, inorganics. Again, it's all items that DEQ is approved what they monitor for, and all of the results were below drinking water standards. This is a map of the groundwater monitoring network at Coffin Butte. You'll see the green ones with the MW, those are monitoring wells. There's 35 different locations that we monitor. There's also, you'll see the ones that say QP, those are piezometers. So we measure the water level in the wells for developing a groundwater contour map twice a year. And then we also monitor all of the leachate sumps so that we know the parameters in the actual leachate and under drains. So those are pipes that are beneath all of the liner systems. So these verify that there's no leakage through the liner itself. Few highlights from different portions of the site. You'll see MW12, there's a red arrow next to it. So that is one of several areas in the area of cell 1 that are kind of like barometer wells. There was remediation on that portion of the site implemented in the 1990s, where they added a geosynthetic or a plastic cap over the waste. That cell had a compacted clay liner because it was constructed in the 70s and 80s when that was what the technology was at the time. So those wells are there to show that the measures we implemented in the 90s are effective. On the far west, on the left side of the drawing, you see where it's labeled closed landfill. You'll sometimes hear that called the burn dump, or I've heard it called the army landfill, a lot of different things. That was a historic landfill dating prior from early 70s and earlier, that we moved over a period of 3 years from that unlined area into lined cells. And so it actually no longer exists, but any residual impacts in that area are very low. And now that we've completed source removal, so the source of any contaminants has been removed and put into a landfill, we expect those to diminish to 0 over time. And then,
sorry,
there's a lot to talk about on this one.
there is.
And then on the east side of the landfill, we have a couple monitoring wells where we did have a slight exceedance of arsenic over the drinking water standard. But this is something based off of long-term monitoring. We have elevated arsenic levels at the site. We see steady trends of it. There's not increasing trends of any of the metals. It's pretty stable over time. And DEQ acknowledges this is a natural background monitoring condition. At MW9, all the way over on Highway 99, that one they've monitored since the early 90s, and it had elevated arsenic levels prior to any of the landfill even being constructed in the area. So next slide. Talk a little bit about PFAS, because that's definitely a topic that's high on the public's agenda right now. So those that aren't familiar, PFAS is it's a group of about 15,000 different chemicals that have been in use since the 1950s. They're in a huge range of consumer goods. We have a list of some of the more common ones, but so Coffin Butte does receive waste that contains PFAS, but the thing to remember is that Coffin, we don't generate the actual PFAS, we are a receiver of it. We're kind of like the wastewater plants that receive wastewater from the public, and that contains PFAS in it. It's definitely an evolving issue that DEQ and the EPA are working on. And it's something we will work with our wastewater partners as regulations evolve to comply with whatever new requirements come into effect. Next one. We'll cover this if you want me to.
You're the expert. I got the next one.
So since it's kind of an orientation and not everybody's seen landfills and isn't familiar with them, we have on the left is kind of a generic version of what the EPA requirement is for the liner that's beneath the base of the landfill. And at the basic level, starting from the bottom, you have 2 feet of compacted clay, a single membrane, and then some kind of leachate collection. So the wastewater that hits the bottom liner, that's called leachate. So there's some kind of collection system for that. So that's kind of the basic to meet the EPA requirements. Oregon is much more stringent. We have a picture of Coffin Buttes on the right side, and it actually has 3 different layers of geomembrane. So starting from the bottom, we have the gravel under drain I talked about that we sample as part of our groundwater monitoring. That's below the entire base of the landfill. On top of that, we have the first layer of liner. And to those that aren't familiar, this is not like plastic. It's heavy duty, high density polyethylene sheets that are welded into a continuous surface that covers the bottom. So we have that first layer of liner, then we have a secondary collection system for leachate. And then on top of that, we have an additional layer of liner, a product called geosynthetic clay liner, and then our final primary layer of liner on top of that. And then above all of that, we have our leachate collection system. And one thing we've heard in community comments is that Coffin Butte doesn't have a clay liner that's as it's required, but that's not accurate. The geosynthetic clay liner, that what we call it GCL for short, because just like everyone else, we like acronyms for everything. So it's an engineered product. It's manufactured out of bentonite clay and some geotextiles. And so it's actually more impervious to water transmission than that 2 feet of compacted clay. And the nice part about it is it's constructed in a factory, so you can do quality control, and it's very consistent versus natural clay that you're trying to source from the environment can be much more inconsistent. Next slide.
And there's been, quite a bit of talk about the safety of our employees. So this slide covers a lot of that. We did have a couple OSHA inspections, one back in October of 23 and again in February. There were 2 minor findings. Well, they call them serious findings, but if you're in the industry, if you've been in manufacturing, what I'll tell you is that these are pretty common. So the first one was we have oxygen in acetylene bottles that we use for torch cutting welding. And the bottles were chained to the wall, but over the years, we had a variety of different height of bottles. And because we had that variety of height of bottles, the chain didn't cross those bottles and hold them to the wall in the proper place. So we had to weed out some of these non-standard bottles to make it a standard process. And then also we have a compressor inside the shop that is part of the vacuum system that pulls the gas off of the landfill, and there's a condenser line on there, and it goes to a drain. And because the floors weren't swept and cleaned, that condensed water got on the dirt and made it muddy and slippery, and so there was a slip and trip hazard. So both of those were considered serious fines, but they were both remedied the same day as the inspector was there. There was also as part of the abatement, OSHA has asked us to do some air quality testing out at the site. You know, even though we're not a hazardous waste landfill, we do have special waste, and all of our special waste is profiled. And the argument was that it's profiled for DEQ, so it's about hazards to the environment. And so they wanted to know how we were protecting our employees. And so we are currently going through a 3-phase process with a third-party consultant. We're spending about $75,000, and they're actually doing air quality testing. We actually started it this week, where many of our employees were randomly selected by this consultant, and they're doing air quality tests. They're also in the process of doing methane testing and exposure, because of course there's been a lot of talk about methane exposure to our employees. And so we're in the process of working with this consultant, and the end game is to see if there's any additional PPE that's required for our employees to be safe at the site, or if there's any other issues that we need to address. So was that on there too?
It is.
Okay, yeah, so we did have some claims of some contaminated soil at the site. So as part of that cell construction that I pointed out that we're going into, we had a maintenance shop on the top of the landfill. And we were made aware that some equipment was being washed outside of the shop and out on the dirt where it wasn't a cell. And so we took that very seriously, of course, and I came to Ian right away, and we came in there, and when we tore down the shop, we took off about 12 to 18 inches of topsoil and put it inside the cell, which is we're, you know, qualified and allowed to do that with contaminated soil. And then we had US Ecology come and test randomly across the area to see if there's any contamination left, and it was cleared up by removing that topsoil. So we were very quick to respond to that. I believe Ian's got all the paperwork and reporting if it's ever needed, but we definitely take that seriously, and we want to make sure we're in good standing. So
If I can just interrupt for a second, we're coming to the end of time for this item.
Oh, we're gonna, I can't make it. It's not, just can you go to the next slide?
You guys heard a lot of information about this, where the waste is coming from, so I'll just do a quick review. You know, about 80% of the volume is coming from the Willamette Valley. You can see 15% from Lincoln County. That's from like Walport, Newport areas, from Dawes and Thompson Sanitation, and then very small amounts from other counties. Those other small amounts, you know, I can't speak exactly what they are, but what I'll tell you is that we are a dirt poor landfill, which means that we're constantly looking for topsoil to cover for daily cover. So sometimes we might get an opportunity from somebody in Tillamook County or Douglas County that says, hey, we've got a big contaminated dirt project. And so we'll bid or try to get that dirt, and we can only use contaminated dirt for daily cover. We can't use it for outside slopes. So there's a difference on that kind of stuff. But those are the kinds of things that we would go after outside of the surrounding area.
So I want to talk a little bit about the Environmental Trust Fund. So it's kind of a unique mechanism that Coffin Butte has. It's not something that's required by DEQ or any federal requirements. It's something that the site and the county worked out in the early 2000s. And it was this fund that they initially funded with, I think it was $5 million. And over time, I mean, it's an investment fund, so over time it does fluctuate, but has increased a fair amount, and now is a little over $16 million. But the thought was that it was a fund that I mean, the franchise agreement specifies how it should be used or how it can be used, but the thought was it was a more quick way than any kind of insurance if some kind of something came up that the county felt they needed the additional funding for. We can go to the next one. The other piece that is a state and federal requirement is funding for closure and post-closure. So those are two separate things. Closure is, it's an estimate for how much it would cost if we close the site today. So if tomorrow we decide to close the site, this is how much it would cost to cap it and finish grading everything out and basically put it to bed so it's done. Post-closure is funds to care for the site for 30 years. So that's the regulatory requirement, is that post-closure or the company has to care for a site for a minimum of the 30 years after a site is closed. And that's from the day the site stops accepting waste. So it doesn't mean we have portions of the site that are already closed, but they're not in post-closure yet because the site is still active. So that's the estimate for that 30-year period of care. And that's also something that DEQ has the discretion to extend beyond the 30-year period. That's just the standard amount of time. And so the closure and post-closure amounts are updated by an engineer on an annual basis, and then we submit them to DEQ for their review and approval. And then eventually the site will be closed and go through the 30 years or however many years of post-closure, and will be a site that we will work with both the local community and regulators to determine what the best long-term use for the site once it's no longer a landfill is. Next slide.
So I'll take this one, and something that Bailey alluded to was the fact that we're making more waste in general in Benton County and across the state. And so our chart basically shows you the same information that Bailey's chart shows you. So I won't go through that, but just to say that, you know, we really need to focus on, as a state, on making less waste. And that's one of the things that we do on a daily basis. So we have an employee whose job it is to do waste prevention and waste recovery education. And he does that by going into schools, by being at different events. He does it in a variety of different ways. And we're working right now on bringing back a master recycler program, which was a program we started about 10 years ago with Oregon State. And that sort of fizzled during COVID. And we think it's a really good time to bring that back, because one of the things that we really want to get out there is that there are some really exciting changes happening in Oregon based on recycling. You may have heard of RMA, the Recycling Modernization Act. If not, you will, because it goes into effect July 1st, 2025. So not even a year from now. And there will be some changes in terms of what goes into the waste, into the recycling stream. It is an EPR program. So that's something else you're going to hear, an extended producer responsibility program. It's a program that asks the producers of products that are sold into Oregon to share in the cost of disposal or recovery of those products. There is a part of that we call eco-modulation, and that just means that if you make a product that's really easy to recover or reuse or recycle in Oregon, you won't pay in as much to the system as the companies that are making products that are very difficult to dispose of. So there's some incentivizing producers to make more sustainable products. And we think that this is going to be a great idea. This has been in the works since 2021. We have been on state boards following this, literally hundreds of hours of meetings, staying on top of this, involved with testifying in favor of the bill, involved with rulemaking as it's gone along. So we feel really prepared to work with the county. And I think we're delighted to have Bailey here, because we know that he is also really prepared to get Benton County into good shape. But some of the things you might see are new products that can go into your commingled recycling, and expanded depots. So where there are depots at the landfill and in Corvallis at our hauling division, you may see more materials in those depots as we move forward. So we just finished a heavy lift where all communities had to complete a survey that will help. If you want to talk about talking in letters, you can, it's a group called CAA, who hired RRS to do an ORSOP survey. And so if that means anything to you, good for you. But what it really means is that we're working with all of these different groups that DEQ is working with to come up with a comprehensive plan. And I did bring, if you don't know much about RMA, I did bring a sheet today for anybody who'd like that, with some more information about the timeline and what it really means for Oregonians. So something I want to end with is that we work with recycling processors. We are not the end market. So when we collect your recycling at the curb, it goes to a facility in Albany where we bale it and we send it to a material recovery center. There's going to be a new name for material recovery centers. They're going to be called commingled recycling processing facilities. So we've been saying MRFs for 100 years, and now we're going to say CREPs. But they determine what will be recycled at those facilities currently, and that is determined on the demand for the material. So we know that some circularity in recycling is a really important element. Republic Services has opened a plastics polymer center in Las Vegas, where we are bringing in plastic materials into a secondary market, and we have customers ready for that material so that we know there's some circularity, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about that. So having a market for material is crucial, and it determines what gets recycling along with the RMA. And one of the things you can know about RMA is that an element of it is that if we put a material into the recycling, it means that there's a responsible end market. So it's not an end market along the shores of riverbanks in Asia. It's a responsible end market. So that's where we are. That's just a really brief overview of recycling.
All right, thank you. So it's now time for committee review. So questions from the committee for the Republic representatives?
This is Rachel Purcell. I had a quick question. You mentioned that the site handles special waste. What did you mean by special waste?
Special waste could be like waste from the hospital. So the hospital has an autoclave where they process medical waste. You know, we can't accept it unless it's processed, but we still call that special waste, where we have to profile it. We have to verify that it's acceptable at the landfill. Special waste could also be material from a sawmill that's really dusty. And we have to make sure that, you know, that it's bagged properly, that it's contained properly, before we'll take it. So there's a variety.
Well, I mean, it's basically anything besides household waste. So municipal solid waste, MSW, you'll hear about a lot. It's basically anything outside of that. So it could be construction and demolition debris from a project. It could be material that's coming from some kind of factory process. It could be reject cans of popcorn from Costco. I mean, it's basically our process on our end to ensure that any waste we're taking is appropriate for the site and meets all state and federal requirements. So,
and I think it's important to say that special waste is not hazardous waste. So
no, it's just
two separate definitions.
Term, I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also debris from wildfires is included in special waste. And that's a big one this time of year to talk about.
Two quick questions. This is Brent Pulowski. You put the stat I saw thrown up there was 140,000 tons. I think that was Benton County pulled out per year of compost. Now you say pulled out, you're saying this is through the yard waste recycling program, the gray bins, or this is pulled out from the trucks during the, just in the.
No, this would be collected on route. That's not just Benton County. That's how much the facility processes.
Right, so that's when you say pulled out, that's basically on the.
Collected on routes.
In a separate truck.
At recycle depots or transfer stations where they have separations. Landfill has a separation area where people can sort out their yard debris. So,
and then I hear the word leachate talked about a lot, but then I saw in your regulatory sheet that, you know, you talk about the agencies in which you get permits with. And one of them just mentioned leachate in city of Corvallis. I assume this is because the leachate gets trucked to the waste treatment plant.
that is correct. We have a permit with the city of Corvallis and the city of Salem both.
Okay.
Steve Hackelman. So first of all, thanks very much for the presentation. I was curious, have you ever looked at what actually comes in to see how much of what comes in probably should have been recycled or something like that?
DEQs, you want to talk about that? DEQ does it on a.
DEQ does, and Bailey, I think, knows a lot about this as well, does what they call waste characterization studies, where they just sort of randomly pick trucks, all the trucks that come in from us to Coffin Butte, and they audit those trucks. They literally dump that truck on the ground, and they have folks who are going through that material and categorizing what comes in. If you look at that opportunity to recycle report, you can see some of the past data from the waste characterization studies, and we think they're getting ready to do another one. They are a big project, a big undertaking. They do them across the state, but we do think they're getting ready to do another one at Coffin Butte. So that's really good information to have. Peter Spendolo is sort of the resident expert of the waste characteristic studies at DEQ, and I would highly recommend having him come in and talk about what's in the waste in Benton County, what we know from the last one, which I believe was 2022. I'll get that number for you, but he's got a wealth of information about what that waste looks like.
Yeah, and this kind of gets to a question that Jennifer had asked earlier about that waste, and I think where you're going with it, excuse me if I'm reading too much into it, but what is in that waste, and these waste characterization studies are what allow us to look at what's going into the landfill and then develop programs around those items.
So following up on that, so data is created, but do we propagate that information to the community?
So I think in the last 10 years, for sure, we have really put an emphasis on organic material. So, and in Corvallis in 2010, I believe we started collecting food scraps and including all organic material in the gray cart. So when we talk about that 140,000 tons, that includes food waste and as well as some commercial food waste. I think there's a lot of opportunity there to get more of that material out of the waste. And we know that DEQ, once they get past RMA, they're going to be looking at that, and we're going to be talking a lot about organic waste. And the city of Corvallis is also talking about sort of is it mandatory, is it not mandatory, but a commercial food waste program. There already is a commercial food waste program, but I think they have some ideas about incentivizing it in some ways to make it more attractive or more necessary for some commercial producers. So I think there's a ton of opportunity there.
And I'll ask one more question.
Sure.
And I'll shut up for a bit. I'm curious as to if we find a way to reduce, what kind of things are the ideal materials to be put into the landfill? I'm curious about that, because it sounds like stuff comes in, but not all of it's what we really want in the landfill, because there might be a different pathway for it. But what is it that the landfill should have in it?
Well, there are a lot of ways to look at that, I think. I mean, one way is to say, what are those materials that we don't yet have any way to recover?
Yes.
And that are really harmful to the environment and that we should encapsulate in the landfill? Another way to look at it is, just take out that what can't we recover? So for now, we put it in the landfill. I think that is a constantly changing question.
Okay.
And I should tell you that RMA is focused primarily on packaging, and that is paper and plastic. And we know that plastic is a really high intensity material in terms of production and recovery. And so recovering more plastic, I think, is a good first step. And the emphasis is on plastics for this first round, I would say. And you'll see some more plastics that can go in your cart in a year.
Matthew Records, and this is just a quick kind of tip of the cap to some of the work that Republic has done that for me personally, has impacted our lives in a very good way, which was, going to a weekly service on the yard debris.
Yeah.
And being able to put food scraps into that yard debris container was a huge benefit to, I know, my family, and feeling better about the things that we're throwing away or now not throwing away, and being able to put in yard debris, especially recognizing the amount that we do personally would exceed what we could store for 2 weeks. So you're kind of left stuck in this lurch. But wanted to acknowledge that your public service, in our community, had moved to that weekly service, which was a huge help for us personally.
I don't know if you know that Monroe in Benton County has just recently gone to a weekly, they didn't have yard debris at all in Monroe, and they've gone to weekly yard debris collection so that they can include that organic food waste as well. So it's happening not just in the bigger areas, but little ones too.
Yeah, and I think it was 2017 when I started, we actually rolled out organics to all of Benton County. It was just Corvallis, Philomath. And so I was a part of rolling out carts to all of Benton County. And I know there's mixed feelings on that, right? A lot of people say, well, I live out in the county, I'm just going to have a compost pile. But a lot of people do use the yard debris containers out in the county as well. Because, you don't have to be very far outside of Corvallis city limits and you're in the county. So not everybody has a burn pile or, a compost pile that's just right across the county line. So.
And I'll also add that when you have a place to put your food scraps to be composted, I think it makes you more aware of how much food we're all wasting. And it makes me sort of go, I got to do a better job than this. So I think it's a good program, and we're real pleased with it as well. And that's why we've seen a big jump at PRC in the number of tons collected.
If I may interject one thing, all materials are not equal, both in volume, but environmentally, their impact. And so food really has an outsized impact environmentally because all the resources that go into growing that food and transporting it and processing it and all that. So food waste prevention, trying to get, it's great to compost and put things in yard debris, absolutely, but the upstream and kind of getting at the bigger environmental issues to try and reduce that food waste in the first place. And other materials that the Department of Environmental Quality have identified are textiles, food, electronics have, it's a small amount of material compared to everything, but it has an outsized impact. And what am I forgetting? There's one more focus material that they have.
I think those are the three main ones. I know we're going to be talking about batteries in the very near future as well, just because they are a dangerous material to transport.
So this is Brent Plowski again. On your slides, you showed two costs for closures and then post-closure activities. So in your post-closure activities, you said, just over $6 million through the year post-closure activities. So right now you're trucking leachate, and that includes post-closure. That leachate still is going to be produced by the landfill. So if I take $6 million for 30 years, that's $200,000 a year.
So once you close the landfill, so right now we have areas of closure, but we have large areas of the landfill that are not under closure. Right. Once you close the landfill, so it's taking a membrane and tying it into that bottom liner system and wrapping it over the entire top, and then you put soil and vegetation on top of that. Once you complete that, you've basically entombed the waste almost completely. So any liquid that's in there gradually does drain out, but it drops off fairly drastically after you get the cap done. So that is part of the projections, is that leachate drops off significantly.
There's no projections such as like you have municipal sewer systems, you get infiltration from groundwater adds to your budget. So you don't expect that the groundwater infiltration and those.
No, because that's why we don't that bottom liner system.
Okay, because when I take 200,000, last time I ordered rock from Coffin Butte, it's $400 for a truck. The $400 a truck, that's only 500 trucks a year. So you use up your $200,000. So, okay, well, we might have more questions later on this.
Yeah, and again, these are prepared by professional engineers that put their license and their stamp on these things.
Yeah, so. But that's all, you're making assumptions and data that's fed to you on that. So
I would say this too, maybe just a comment.
Yeah,
So we make estimates just to kind of help budget.
right.
If it costs more than that, we pay more than that. So
Yeah,
it's
right.
not like we would run out of whatever our budgeted leachate was kind of derived at years ago and then just walk away. So if we end up having to spend more money, and there's plenty of examples of that, then we stand by the site and make sure that it's safe.
Yeah.
The money that we need to spend to make sure that we're managing it properly. So it's not like the budget is the definition, it's managing the site is the definition.
And it's something Republic has one of the 125 closed landfills across the country. So it's not like this is the only one and we're just walking away.
Well, right.
Republic is tied to the site forever. So
Okay, Republic's tied to the site forever. You,
Legally, there's a document besides just a commitment.
well, I mean, we are committed to the site for the life of the site, yes, and through the end of closure. And beyond as needed. I mean, that's what we do across the country.
Means, and like, let's say if you were sold, your company was sold, does a new entity take on, I'm thinking the DuPont selling off?
Yeah, it would
you
be
know,
the new
example,
entity. I mean,
like if that moves, does that liability move, transfer?
yeah, no, it becomes part of the new company. I mean, we talked, Bailey talked about a little bit. Valley Landfill was the original entity. That's what the name of all the permits are. Allied Waste purchased that in 2000, and then in 2008, Republic bought it. So all of the liabilities and long-term care transfer through the owners. It doesn't just disappear overnight.
Okay, this is Jennifer. I have a question. You mentioned somewhere early in the slides about that you manage wetlands. What does it mean to manage wetlands context?
So the site was created, I mean, it dates back obviously to the 70s and beyond, when wetlands were not as deemed as important as they are today. And so we have mitigation wetlands that have been built since the 1990s to offset impacts from earlier activities. So the 40 acres are those mitigation wetlands across the site. There's some off on the west side, and then some towards the front of the site along 99.
So is that like a stand of poplars? Because I remember when those went in. So are those essentially phytoremediation?
No, my understanding is those poplars were put in for a sound buffer for the power plant for the neighbors to the south. Or I mean to the north. So no, those are not part of any phytoremediation. And David might remember because he's lived here longer.
Okay. I mean, you could also, yeah, just curious. So
Yeah, so all of the wetlands go through the Department of State Lands, and they go through design and approval and monitoring and eventual state sign off. So all of those steps have taken place.
And that's wetland on site, not talking about the east downgrading E.E. Wilson. That's not part of your.
No, that's not part of our facility. It's just on our property.
Okay. Coming back to that PRC, you mentioned you sell the spots. You're probably well aware of the recent studies on compost derived from various sources, fertilizers derived from various sources, including compost, and how those have become, sources of the PFAS, which is disappointing, right? Seattle had a huge municipal take back of compost and then recycling that within the city. And I don't know what happened to that after they discovered, that compost has got quite a few PFAS in it. And so on that webinar, I asked a question about knowing that food waste, which is a big, term of PFAS, going to the PRC, that's offsite. You mentioned it tonight. I get the impression that there's none of the geo, engineering that has gone at that site. But I don't know anything about it, frankly. But there's a lot, and there's this big effort to divert waste. And I know one of the answers or one of the responses about PFAS as being in that site, which is again not the focus of what you talked about tonight. But we recognize that pathway, and that taking food and packaging out is important. But I think we also know that's not the only fact that helps, but it doesn't cut it out. So is that site instrumented at all, or around that site? Are there groundwater wells? Are there piezometers? What do we know, or is anybody asking about how that's, because we do get rainfall, right? So I would totally expect that to have It'd be like a hotspot or on the background.
Yeah, that is not something that's currently required by DEQ regulations for any kind of groundwater monitoring at
Do you think
compost
that will
facility.
come though because of the change in the status of?
Hard to speculate.
I know just enough to be dangerous in that we have a expert, I would say, in the industry. His name is Chris Sini. He works for our company at corporate office. And he has told us that like the National Compost Committee is looking into, things like PFAS and compost, and it's in the early stages, just like a lot of it. So, we don't really understand. What I can tell you is what we do at the site is, we bring the material in, we try to remove as much contamination as possible. We grind it, we put it in windrows. We have temperature probes that go up and down, and we're constantly monitoring temperatures. We have all these requirements that we have to follow to get it up to a certain temperature to kill, organisms and microorganisms that are bad, everything from E. coli to you name it. We have to test every 5,000 yards of compost that's made to verify that the compost doesn't have any of these harmful things in it. We have an organic certification. We have compost certifications that we're doing all the things right. And so based on what we know right now, we're doing everything that we can. And like Ian said before, as things change, we will change with that, and we'll follow any requirements that need to be looked at. I mean, we know that food waste is a big thing, and we're looking at food waste processing machines right now. Christine, who I talked to you about, we've got several food waste processing machines in California where they dump in food waste and it pulls out the plastics, and they take that food waste to either digesters or they put a certain percentage of it into compost processes. But it's really early in the process, and we will adapt as needed.
And I still have one of the public comments, someone asking about treatment of leachate. And of course, I'm sure your company's totally on it. There's quite a bit of movement in that area too. Of course, it's gonna cost time and money. I'm thinking of foam fractionation and foam separation. And is that, again, I don't know what these new regulations in terms of leachate is. You're what? You're not, your leachate is probably what, 10 to 1,000 times, depending on the compound, hotter than the wastewater treatment plant. But it's smaller volume. You're putting in about 1%.
Less than 1%. We're in Corvallis, we're about 0.6%.
Yeah, I calculated the volume,
Yeah.
but the PFAS is actually higher because the concentration is higher in that volume that goes in there. So but it's still only like 1%. But is there discussion, serious discussions about trying to implement technology? And foam fractionation is not perfect because it takes the longer chain things, but that's the ones we kind of worry about.
So we also have wastewater experts at our corporate level that are definitely engaged at the national level on emerging technologies and treatment solutions. I mean, we know that treatment is something that will be coming and will be part of it. It's just figuring out exactly what that looks like and what levels and what exactly we have to treat for. And I mean, it's the same thing that all of the wastewater plants everywhere in the country are going to be facing. All landfills across the country. I mean, this is a huge issue that will impact a lot of industry.
Do you expect Corvallis might go, whoa, no thanks on that 81,000 gallons per day for, that they might also go, we don't want it either, and when they start to possibly limit what they're willing to take?
I would say that, I think they're all going to be tasked to put in treatment facilities that can handle their own. And I guess, I haven't had intimate conversations, but I guess what I would hope is that we partner somehow to understand what that processing capacity needs to be to support our needs. Not just with us, but across, the city. And so that's why, like right now, I know you mentioned a pretty high number of gallons that's going to Corvallis. I mean, like I can tell you that yesterday it was only 28,000 gallons. So it all depends on what the outflow is. We only can take a certain percentage of leachate to Corvallis due to the minimal amount of outflow. And then we take the rest of it to Salem because they have a larger outflow. Yeah. So
yeah, it fluctuates based on season.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, it's early in the development and we're gonna be a part of it.
Okay, and then the other thing I had a question about was the methane. I'm not in methane expert at all. But the person we've done landfill work, it's more of our labs out of NC State. So he's partnered with various companies, probably gross as well. To sample that landfill gas, we had to have explosion-proof equipment, which suggests that methane, maybe you can educate me here, that methane, and they were trying to do national, so that it wasn't specific to a location. But that methane levels get above the low explosion limit, which is why you have to have So is that true here, that a lot of that gear has to be explosion-proof? Or were we just extra cautious?
So any system where we have electrical components that might be around landfill gas, so say or something, we do have ratings for that just as a precaution. It's unlikely, but you don't want to accidentally have something. So it's also why, I mean, we have pumps in a lot of our vertical gas wells to extract liquids. All of those are pneumatic powered so that they're intrinsically safe because you don't have any electricity running through them. It's also a lot easier to run air lines than electrical lines across the site. But so, yeah, I mean, there is some validity if you are in the right conditions. That, yeah, you do want to use the right equipment.
Corresponds to like human exposure levels. Clearly, though, exposing them is not good from a human perspective to try and match, but I didn't know like where those are relative to each other, because I haven't really thought about methane exposure, but I guess that makes sense. Like, oh yeah, an explosion-proof pump.
We don't know a lot.
Well, I mean, it's an asphyxiant.
Yeah,
So it's really not the methane itself, it's just displacing the oxygen. That would be the bigger hazard. And so our technicians that are working on gas wells or those type of equipment have a more gas meter that measures the lower explosive limit, oxygen levels, and those methane and those kind of things. Yes, while they're working.
I'd like to, this is David Hackelman again.
Yeah.
I'd like to move to a slightly different topic. I know it sounds, I'm curious as to the operations of landfill pretty much are not 7/24. Is that correct?
Are not what?
They're not
7 days a week.
24 hours a day. So
No.
what, do you have any means to ensure safety and security during the times that you have no operations going on?
Well, we really rely on local, you know, local authorities. I mean, you know, like we had an example here recently where we had a grass fire and, you know, they have all of our emergency contact information, and I was contacted as the general manager of the whole business unit.
Of course.
The landfill manager was notified, and then of course we're calling each other to make sure that everyone knows. And before we even got there, Adair fire and Corvallis fire were already there and the fire was already out. And so, you know, so we rely on the, you know, local emergency response, and they've got, you know, contact information to get a hold of us, and that's how we respond.
So I've got some more information about that. I don't know if the committee members saw, you know, there's some community comments about that. And it is talking about landfill related fires. So the first such fire, there were two of them. So there was the one that you were just talking about, which is the grass fire, I think, by the methane flares.
Correct.
But then there was an earlier fire in early May, which was up in the active tipping area up on top of the landfill.
Correct.
And so both of these were essentially called in by passersby.
Okay, well, so I guess what I'm kind of asking is, and I think I've got the answer sort of, is that there might be some opportunity. Is there some opportunity for some automated things that would tell you if something like
we talked about that.
Or something like that's happening.
There's thermal cameras that we could put on the working face probably. I mean, you know, again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's what we're going to do, but we've talked about that there's thermal cameras. I'm on the board at another facility at Marion County, and they have a thing that they're installing called a fire rover. I don't know if that would work in the large area that we're talking about, but it also watches the facility for hotspots. So I think there's always things that we could talk about and consider, but I don't know the detail.
I was also kind of trying to think about the employees and things, because there's equipment there and they're expecting it to be fine when they show up to it. And we don't want some random event to take place on the equipment while they're not there.
Yeah.
You know, so things like that.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So this is Brent Pawlowski again, and sorry I couldn't hijack the meeting with questions because we're over time. Question, when you talked about the expansion of being half the size of the one originally proposed, I think in 21. And one of the areas you mentioned keeping the road open if that was an area of contention. I mean, so go expand the landfill, make to a big pile of garbage, but not such a big pile as you originally proposed. Wanting to keep the road open. Did you ever try to negotiate or consider sending traffic to Robson Road, improving Robson Road, and just sending residents a mile to the north?
We proposed that on the first
CUP
and wasn't very popular.
And
part of the reason was that the fire marshal didn't support that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for response time to Soap Creek Valley, or
I can't remember.
That's well.
But it felt like it was a tougher way for folks to get out if they needed to in a hurry than to use Coffin View Road. And we tried very hard to listen to the comments that were made and what people said during Benton County Talks Trash program, and design an expansion that heard what people said and changed some of those things.
Okay. I mean, just when you approach a project like that, there is an element of economies of scale.
Yeah.
And you might want to optimize those. Okay, thanks.
Just one question. I know cell 6 has always been a quarry and you're going to have it finished, but that scale there, you've been working with Knife River and all their predecessors to get that down. So it's just at that time, there was quite a bit of extra time getting that quarry down to the correct elevation. And so my question is, in the expansion, you've got rock over here. Is there not rock over here? And will that need adequate time to excavate the quarry there?
Yeah, the expansion area will take time to excavate and grade to the appropriate grades. I mean, a portion of it get used for construction of the new leachate ponds and some of the grading and for berms and things, but it'll definitely take some time.
Will it still be active for Knife River to do that, or is this pretty well the end of Knife River?
This will be the end of Knife River working in the quarry.
Yeah, we expect, I mean, I know there was a lot of focus on rock movement, but at the time they've stopped moving rock because we believe that there's enough rock in the quarry for them to continue to mine and sell from the quarry. It doesn't make sense for us to move the rock out. And then, as Ian stated, they'll be leaving enough in there for us to do cell development and utilize in other places. So that's what the plan is. And I mean, I think we expect them to be done by early first quarter of 25, because we will start doing some cell development at that time.
Okay, thank you.
I just had one hopefully quick question, which is, if the expansion is approved, are there more expansions that you foresee doing on the site?
I don't have any knowledge of that or any plans of that at this time. So
Are they possible? I mean, could you?
I think anything's possible. So yeah, I mean,
I'd say, who knows, right? When or where, what they would look like would be speculation, and they'd all be subject to the same very process.
Jennifer, I guess I'm going to ask about something that's related to one of the comment sets and also the report. So in the annual environmental monitoring report and trends,
it appears that there's two wells that are focus of attention, NW 26 and 27, yet I saw on the slides there's 35. And one of the questions that one of the people had was availability of those data sets. Are they publicly available? Because I think, for folks who are used to looking at like aerial plans and putting concentrations into the broader regional context, that makes a big argument for like, oh yeah, all of those arsenic, that is background work. So putting any of these numbers or trends, it just tells about the trend within that well. It doesn't tell us the spatial relationship. And since I'm not an expert in landfills, but this idea of capping and isolating, well, that sounds great. But I think data that supported that regional groundwater is not impacted, or air quality, which is a little bit harder, but that goes a long way to going, oh yeah, those geomembranes and that triple whatever membrane really does its job. So they're asking for the data, I guess we're asking for groundwater, and although I'm not sure VOCs tell us much, because those are greatly vented out, right? Gas. I really wouldn't expect that. It's water soluble stuff like PFAS that tend to move with the water. I think that would be a very compelling support for this idea that eventually this will be an isolated system, and that it's isolated now.
So all of those all those results are reported annually to DEQ in annual environmental monitoring report. And the county has copies of all of those. So county
Dating back how
far? Digital, I'm not sure, because late 2000, around 2010 is when I think things started to go more digital. Before that, it was a lot of paper. But the reports themselves show data back to, I mean, some of it's the 80s and
Or even
90s.
just snapshots, spatial snapshots, like even just lead indicator like sodium and chloride.
Yeah, those are all part of that report that's
Yeah,
available.
You go, oh yeah, there isn't, you can't see the landfill, it just looks like background. Those are compelling, perhaps thoughts, or it might answer this, whoever the citizen is that's interested in that. And I think it would help us understand. Like, oh,
Yeah, no, it's all available, and it's about a 750-page report. So,
well, maybe you could like bring our attention to certain appendices, would have like a map, some basic.
Yeah, I mean, there's a table of contents that has all which appendices has one of. I mean, there's some that have like daily leachate generation, where it's just the amount that's disposed, all of those type of things. There's one that has trends, plots from all of the different monitoring points going back to the beginning. I don't know the actual off the top of my head, but yeah, it's all in that environmental monitoring report.
That's something if people wanted to see it, we could direct our attention to where we could find it.
Yeah, they can assist you with that. They tend to be rather large files, so it's not even local.
But like Bailey today said, you don't need to read the whole code, but these pages are interesting. It could be something like that. Like, oh, look at Appendix B, that's got on it.
Well, that's what historically we've tried to, I mean, this is something we worked through with DSAC over the years. That's kind of why there's the executive summary from the annual monitoring report is included in our annual report. And then some of the charts that DSAC at the time deemed ones they wanted to see every year as we move forward. If that's different, a slightly different format, that's something we can look at. But this is kind of just historically over the years what DSAC has been interested in.
Can I move that we move on to the next agenda item, Ken?
In just a moment. I'm just kind of waiting for an opportunity for me to get in a question or two here. So the question that I have about the annual report is having to do with methane. And, there's been quite a bit of press and, EPA inspections, et cetera. So there's a lot of concern about methane. I noticed that in the annual report, you talk about the methane system that you have in place. And I saw the information on that. The question is, how much methane does that system not capture? And I don't really see any data or really anything in the annual report that kind of acknowledges, that there are a lot of questions about that. 2023, that would be the year that you would mention that a carbon mapper flew over Coffin Butte landfill and profiled some methane leaks at Coffin Butte landfill. So that's, do you have, and I guess that, you said something, I think, Ian, about kind of disparaging, I guess, the idea of, using methane imaging systems because they're not ones which are recognized by EPA yet. But I'm just wondering if you're actually interested in preventing methane leaks from happening, which it certainly seems like this technology would help you do.
So there was about 3 or 4 questions. I'll try to remember them all. First one is methane generation. So there really isn't a good way to estimate very accurately what's generated versus what's collected. EPA has models developed, but they're a model with a lot of assumptions. Take, for example, Coffin Butte, that 140,000 tons of organics were removed. There's really not a good way to account for that in the EPA modeling to show that there's a lower methane generation potential even. So the best you have are EPA models, and typically EPA estimates sites collect about 75% of what's generated. A portion of the additional is oxidized in the cover soil, and then whatever remains would be fugitive. Second part was about carbon mapper. We're definitely engaged and involved with that Canada national level and working to fine tune the techniques. Some of the challenges are people wanted to measure methane flow, and you're really just measuring point concentration. So you don't have any data showing actually whether it's just a high concentration but super low flow, or low concentration, higher flow. It doesn't calculate any of that. The other piece is emissions vary. It's a biological system that's impacted by weather and
Atmospheric pressure.
So you could measure the site 3 weeks in a row and get different measurements because it just varies a lot over time.
The current system that you have is that a specialist walks over the landfill kind of according to a pre-established route, holding a methane detecting wand. And when they find a methane leak, then you have 10 days to fix it. Or maybe I'm generalizing too much, but that's kind of, that is the system that happens right now, right? Once a quarter that happens?
That is correct. That's the EPA and state mandated method that we utilize. So we don't have flexibility substitute method on that at this point.
Right. So what you're used to is you're used to actually going over the surface of the landfill looking for methane leaks. So it seems to me that a technology like the carbon detectors, that Carbon Mapper has available, you could use that in real time to look at the landfill and see where methane was leaking out and then fix it. So is there no talk about that?
No, I mean, that's part of our national focus. I mean, we have a person that just specializes in air compliance at the national level, and that's something they're actively working on with EPA. We're part of all sorts of rulemaking committees and getting things changed, but I mean, it takes time. A lot of these monitoring methods date back to the 90s when rolled out, So
the part that's confusing me, Ian, is the EPA part. I'm just talking about, Republic, a sustainability company, who has concerns about climate emissions, on your own, putting in a system so that you get a better handle on your methane emissions.
I guess what I'll say is that on our own, we have invested $9 million and we have 3 times the industry standard worth of wells. And we are constantly working with PNGC to get them to utilize and pull more gas off of the system. So we don't control what EPA or DEQ says or expects of us. But I think that we've shown plenty of initiative and investment on our own that we want to pull as much gas off of that landfill as possible. And that's why we do the quarterly maintenance, is to go and repair and fix and try to make sure that we're capturing that. So to suggest that we don't care, I don't think is a fair assumption.
Well, again, we kind of have come full circle because we're back at the point where it's great for you, you know, to spend this money and invest in the system. The question is how, you know, let's see, you know, do I need to show you, like, I can do a little share screen thing here. Oh, it's disabled. Okay. So there seems to be evidence mounting that there's a lot of methane leaking out of Coffin Butte landfill. So this is getting past your system. So that's not a material, you know, thing to be talking about. And you know, in terms of the power plant there also, you know, we've had this conversation before, haven't we, where they have been running flat out for, you know, what, over 10 years or something like that, that the excess methane that's being collected now just gets flared. I mean, there are 3 flares now, which you can see out in the field. So that methane is not being used to do anything constructive. It's not being used to power homes. Right. And I understand. But you know, when in 2021, when I had we went on a landfill tour and we stopped by the power plant there, they were talking about their expansion proposals, you know, and that was 3 years ago, and I don't think anything has been done. So, you know, so to get to the point, I'm just saying that it seems to me like there are technologies which are available, you know, but you're kind of moving at the speed of regulation, which we all know is kind of like doing a slow walk. And so, and I appreciate, you know, the fact that you're telling me that, you know, on the national level, the companies are, you know, you as a company are working with EPA, and you're working with Carbon Mapper, which is really good. I'm just interested in actually getting some results now. And so it just seems to me like something that you could look into would be some sort of system that uses the advanced technology and, you know, to actually fix the leaks in the landfill, not because EPA requires it, but because you actually want that to, you know, to be done. So that's all I'm asking about, you know, if there's any initiatives like that that's going on, and it sounds like there aren't.
At a national level, I mean, you got to remember, we operate hundreds of landfills across the country. And so until we've thoroughly vetted out a process to verify that it's both useful and providing useful information, I mean, we're not going to roll it out to all of the sites. That's why we're working at a national level to figure out the best technology, and we'll eventually, I foresee, rolling it out all across the country.
And I guess to get back to my original point is just that it seemed like some sort of discussion of that would have been appropriate in your annual report. There wasn't really any talk about any of the EPA findings or any of the Carbon Mapper findings or anything. There's no mention of it whatsoever. So I am sensitive to the fact that one of the committee members has said that perhaps we should wrap up. Are we ready to move on, committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So the next item on the agenda, Bailey, you wanted to mention briefly the schedule for future meetings?
Yeah, I'd like to be able to plan them out in advance, for one reason, so we can reserve this room. So I've thrown out some dates. I was trying, and I think it was that one you were just on. I put out some dates. I think I was generally trying to shoot for the 4th Wednesday of the month. This being the 3rd Wednesday, but I was anxious to get us to bring this group together. So those are some proposed times, or days, I should say, with meetings beginning at 6. From the poll that I sent out to everyone, I tried to find the day that worked the best for the most people and the time that worked the best. So that's why we're meeting on Wednesday.
I do
at
have
6.
a question, Dave Hackelman. So is it okay if I do most of them by the internet? Because Wednesdays I'm supposed to be somewhere else on a Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that's probably
I'm around Monday and Tuesday, but Wednesday's a bad day for me to be physically here.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. If you can't physically be here and you can attend online, that's fine.
I can probably do that. And then sometimes I can be here.
Yeah. I think. Great. And I think that the committee can decide. I think it's beneficial to have us in person so that we can kind of get to know one another a little bit more. But eventually, if the committee decides that they want to move the meetings to virtual and online ones, that can be a discussion.
Personally, I don't like online meetings as much as in person because you get to see people and you can actually, there's more to interaction than just what you get from an internet connection. I apologize, but like I said, Wednesday, I'm supposed to be somewhere else.
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
Well, Bailey, how invested are we in Wednesday?
When I did
it seems if we have a regular conflict by a member, that we should really be looking at another day of the week.
I sent out a poll to everyone, and Wednesday was the
best
day that looked like it worked the best. We can revisit that or do another poll if the committee would like.
So I'll just make a quick comment for myself personally. It's Wednesdays it depends on how they line up with my council meetings, because I'm every other Wednesday I'm in a council meeting. So depending on where those fall, and I don't have a full calendar in front of me, it would be pretty problematic for me.
Would it be beneficial to the committee if I send out another survey?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
I think that would be good.
Every 3rd, because that's a combination of 3, 3rd, and 4th. So it's not, it's wonderfully one-stop shopping on your calendar, like every 4th Wednesday. That'd be great if we could get there, but you can't.
Okay.
I think from the public point of view, we just want to have a predictable schedule. But outside of that, I think that we're pretty free to do what we like, what works for the most of us.
And I've got probably one of the more constraining schedules, so I apologize for that. And I'll see if I can accommodate whatever the team finds as the better day. But I do like what was just mentioned by, and I can't see your name, so I can't remember it, by Jennifer. The public is going to recognize, well, like it's the X of the Y. That means there's going to be a meeting, and then they'll be more able to interact with us.
Yeah, good point. And also, I'd just like to say that while we didn't invite public testimony or comments tonight, I thought it best for us to have an orientation together since it's the first meeting. But at future meetings, we will be open to the public, be they online or in person.
Quick procedural question. If we ask for something that's given to us, does that mean it's a public thing because we're public?
Or is there some things that are shared that is committee privilege? I mean, it'd be helpful to really have bright lines.
I think anything that would be sent out to the group would come from me and therefore would be public record.
Okay, not that we're
Okay.
necessarily sending stuff out, but just trying to understand like if it needs to be sequestered or if it's.
I can't think of anything that we'll be covering that would be confidential information.
Now, that also means that if you send us any message, it's okay for it to share it with the public, or I'm trying to, that's acceptable, because I want to make sure everybody feels comfortable with how we interact.
Yeah, anything I send, you're
Great.
welcome to,
Thanks.
to send.
Okay, so I guess we're done with that. We're going to, Bailey, you're going to send us a poll and we'll figure out the meetings from then. I would just recommend that we choose a time or look for a time which is earlier in the month, just because as experienced, we have DSAC has been meeting on the fourth Wednesdays of the month. And that just becomes problematic when you get into November and December. You now have to change it because otherwise it's running into Christmas or it's running into Thanksgiving. And so if we can find someplace earlier in the month, then you won't have that kind of predictable problem.
Great, good recommendation.
So let's.
Before you guys wrap up, I do want to offer and suggest a tour of Coffin Butte Landfill and Pacific Region Compost. I feel like if you're going to be advising and participating in community involvement, that you come and see what it is that you're advising on and get to see what we do. We have a half-size model of our liner system. You get to have a tour of the whole site, get to see the PNGC site, and you'll have Ian there, myself, Julie, other operational people, and you'll be able to ask a lot of questions and get really informed. And so I just really encourage a tour as well.
That's a great idea. If this sounds agreeable, I'll put it in that poll.
Sure.
And I'll work.
And I would just practically suggest that it get done earlier than later in the year because it gets mucky and muddy out. It's just easier before that.
It gets dark pretty early.
And it
in the
gets
day,
dark,
Get into
yeah.
the later parts of the year,
So-
so there's not much to see in the dark.
Early fall is a great time.
Great.
Sorry for interrupting you, Ken.
Oh, no problem. So I think that the landfill tour sounds like a great idea. So on to the last item, well, not quite the last, but requesting agenda items for our next meeting. So does anyone have anything that they would like to?
This is Rachel Purcell. I'd like to request that we, I don't know, Bailey, this would be you or Petra, but get a presentation on how exactly we're engaging with the public on the site now. So, like what kind of outreach is done, like how people get informed of meetings, what email address they use when they have complaints that they file, all that stuff. Because I know it's changed hands a whole bunch. It was with BCPT for a while. But just some kind of like overview of how it happens. So we have a sense of like how the community is actually able to engage with us.
Yeah, excellent. So
Dave Hackman, I'd like the opportunity to make requests for the next agenda items to be considered after today. I mean, I'd like a day or two to think about and then send in a request. And, it can either be accepted or denied. That's okay. I just can't think of the right ones just right now.
I think you can request things up to like you wanted a couple of weeks out before the next meeting for agenda items. Sorry.
Ideally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can submit it, up to the day of the meeting, but we'll probably set the agenda, a week or two.
Yeah, if you can put a deadline for requests, that'd be great,
Excellent.
Those requests go to Bailey.
Yeah,
And to the chair.
Oh, okay.
since we are both in charge of putting together the agenda. So I have a request, and we can possibly take action on this right now, depending on kind of what Bailey would like to do. So if you go to the DSAC webpage right now, there's some information there about, and this is really kind of following up on what was just being said. There is no language saying that the Disposal Site Advisory Committee welcomes your comments, welcomes your complaints, other input from the public. There's no address, email address to actually send things to. There's no contact information. The web pages used to have that information, and I'm not sure exactly what happened to it. But certainly, it seems to me before our next meeting, when we're actually going to have public input, we need to update that. So I've developed some language basically based on what used to be there, which I'll read to you now. The Disposal Site Advisory Committee, DSAC, welcomes comments, complaints, and other input from the public. Community members may provide comment verbally during the public comment portion of each meeting. DSAC also welcomes written comments. You may email these to and web address, or deliver them to the Community Development Department. Written comments received by noon on the day of the meeting will be shared with the committee prior to meeting. Brief comments and complaints can also be filed by calling, and then there's a number. So does that sound like a good thing? I mean, for us to do with the webpage? I mean, you can take a look at the webpage right now. There's no encouragement for the public to participate in any way. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said that sounds like a good addition to me, if you don't mind emailing me that description that you just read.
Yeah. I'm sorry, who's talking right now?
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Bailey.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I was going to be emailing it to the right person. Yeah, Bailey, I'll send that to you. So, so that's, I guess I would like to get some committee feedback on the idea of having that done,
Okay. Of course, I'll give feedback. I'm quick at it. But I'd say that the only thing that I heard in your comments was I'm wondering whether noon on the day of the meeting gives Bailey or people enough time to put stuff together, or if you want to back it up a little bit.
Whatever you think, Bailey. Again, I'm just quoting from what was already being done.
Yeah.
I'll talk with my supervisor, Petra Sheets, about that.
Okay, so you can adjust that time, that deadline time, based upon what works for staff.
But Ken, in terms of feedback, it makes good on the notion, right? It's like not just saying you can, but here you go. Here's all the ways you can do it. So it's easier. And you give them a pathway for that if they want to.
Yeah. Jennifer, it's Jennifer, right? I'm
Okay.
having trouble hearing you. Maybe you're a little far away from the mic.
Yeah. Yeah, it just reinforces that you say there's room for public comment, but then you actually give them discrete ways to do that. So it's good follow through. It looks good.
Right. And so I guess the larger agenda item, so thank you very much for that. The larger agenda item is just, I think I would encourage the committee to just kind of look at the webpage with that idea in mind about, I mean, it is indeed the face of DSAC to the public. And so we just want to make sure that what's on there is kind of communicating how we perceive ourselves or how we want to be perceived.
Good question along those lines. Do people ever get, members of the committee ever get approached individually? Has that happened? Once people figure out you're on the committee, is that a thing? We have to be thoughtful of?
Depends what your answer was initially. Sorry.
So have you been approached by people who've identified you as a member of the committee? I mean, could we have individual interactions? Does that ever happen?
I have once, prior there, let me start over. Yes, staff directs it because I had staff call me one time and they wanted to know about agricultural char. So I talked to one of the members in the audience about it and so forth like that. So, but it was just specific on direction of staff and the question that was relevant to that member. I've never had a whole congregation.
So people aren't calling you at home or doing
No,
anything funky like that,
No.
right?
If somebody approaches you, I would run it to staff to see if, you know.
Yeah, okay,
that
so like
way.
if we were approached, we might ask Bailey or Ken, like,
Yeah,
that happened.
yeah.
Not that it would, but just.
No, it's nice to know. I didn't even respond to him until I was directed by staff, and then it was an internal conversation, so.
I've been approached by times through casual conversation, just more people curious, background or, what I know.
I have been approached and I've not even been on a committee yet. So I think there's a process for people to send in comments. And they can maybe, if they send them to us, then we need to forward them to something so that they're all recorded. Unless you tell them, I'm not going to take that for you, you need to submit it. I think that's kind of our options to avoid the circumstantial evidence or something that is hearsay. It'd be better if it came direct from the person asking, or we did say we'd convey it and send it in to Bailey, I guess, and our chair, so that they have it.
Yeah, and then those would all be consolidated and sent out.
All right. I think since we're an hour overtime, I want to thank you all for hanging in there. But it's now 9:01 p.m. And I would entertain a motion to end this meeting.
Second.
Well, I need someone to move. I can't actually make a motion myself.
So moved, Ken.
Yeah, and seconded.
Very good. This meeting is thereby adjourned. Thank you all so much. Really productive meeting.
Trying to get to meet you.
That's all this is.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Well, maybe it was over in Europe on a long flight.
Right, well, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's a blessing.
Yeah, when your bosses are around, you can't fix up your hygiene.
That's right. That's the excellent part of the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot.